So welcome back, everybody. My name is Paul, and a lot of people have seen a lot of my videos, and I make a lot of informative videos about my studies of esoteric history and esoteric theology and esoteric mysticism that I've done for the last 45 years. I was fortunate. I was grown up in India, and my father was a Methodist missionary and a minister, and his father was also a minister who went to Africa, Belgian Congo. So I was the minister's kid of the minister's kid, and I got given the name Paul, a very Christian name. And when I was born in India and grew up there until I was around 14. So I began a sort of a pilgrimage, you might say, or inquiry into my roots, because being a Christian missionary, my dad, naturally I was going to Sunday school and did all the things and read the Bible and learned all that stuff. And as I got a little older, I started to question a little bit, because my parents my dad was a very authentic person, and he really tried to live according to the teachings of the Bible and of Jesus, and he was a very kind and giving person. But I felt that he lacked, there were some things over the years that he just had a lot of questions about. And in my own life, I want to know, well, what is this all about? The Hindus have teachings, and the various religions of the world have various teachings, and Christian religion, they all say, well, we're right, and all this and that. And it started me on a long search, and I thought I'd share some of my knowledge and things I've learned over the years and my perceptions, to maybe help people go through this process of learning a little bit more about the history of the Christian religion and how it relates to the other teachings of the time and so on. Because it's quite a conflict these days in the world. There's a lot going on, and people hold to their religious views that were founded long ago in isolated parts of the world. For example, when Jesus was born at that time, about 2,000 years ago, the Hindus already had a very, very long history of teaching about avatars and incarnations and so on. But in the Middle East, there was a various different kinds of religions going on there at the time, and the appearance of an avatar in that area was a very, very different occurrence. It was very difficult for the person, and as we know, there's a lot of time missing in the Bible from Jesus' life, which I thought I'd share some interesting information with people to help them understand a little bit more. Well, in part of my own personal analysis about the history of Jesus and the Christian religion, I came to one obvious conclusion, that really, supposedly he was born, and we hear a little bit about his life until he was around 12 or so, and then apparently he went missing for about 18 years. Shows up again at age 30 or so, and we can read all the words of Jesus in the Bible in half an hour. It's just like, well, is that it? So it's very, very puzzling, and how can you really relate to a person that lived 2,000 years ago, and you have just, a very tiny amount of his words, and we don't know what he looked like or anything. And this has been a real problem for religions, because they didn't have recordings. Maybe they could make a statue or something, but they didn't have photographs, so they can't really. It's hard to prove after 1,000 years. Well, so-and-so lived, and he did this and that and the other thing. Now, I wanted to share with you a little bit of information that a lot of people who might be devout Christians are listening to this and curious, that the 18 years of Jesus' life that are missing from the Bible, you'd be surprised that there's a place up in northern India in the Kashmir area. I've forgotten exactly where it is right now, but they said that this man, they still dress like Hebrews, and they still wear some of the same garments, and they said that he came there and he taught for many, many years and lived a long life after he kind of had been in the Middle East, and they called him Issa, and they said there were Tibetan scriptures and so on that said, well, he was here, and they even have a tomb. They actually have a tomb over there that they won't ever allow anybody to open up, and they said, well, this is where he is. And that's a fascinating story, but how did it come about? Why is it that there's Hebrew people or looking people that live up in the mountains of India. You see, now I grew up in India, and many people know the concept of avatar, or an incarnation, or a divine approach to the birth is very, very common. It's just part of their culture for thousands and thousands of years. And a lot of the timing of these appearances are related to astronomy because, for example, if you think about the big cosmos and that we're in, like we have a solar system, maybe that's all we can conceive right now, but there's just an immense amount of stuff going on in the solar system, all these energies and various waves of various kinds and gamma rays and electricity and so on that flows along the solar system. And just like the seasons on Earth, there's certain times of the season where the Earth gets around a certain point where there's a lot more energy flowing in, and then the trees can grow and all the plants can grow and everything. And all the animals have their babies, and that time was like in the springtime in the northern hemisphere. And, the same way on a cosmic scale that, there's times and seasons astronomically when there's various kinds of energies that are abundant in our system, and maybe the sun goes through some cycles or some other body comes through or whatever, but the sun is moving along through space, and over the cosmic time, it enables certain aspects, certain alignments to happen where tremendous cosmic energy can come in from a higher plane into a lower plane. And these are what they call the avatars. Now, the Indian system of yoga in the advanced stages trains people to make their body so pure and have their whole psyche and their whole being just so completely in service and a channel and high vibration that it may take lifetimes and it may take centuries of different kinds of teachings and so on to go through, where finally the timing happens, where the energy can happen, and these beings, these advanced yogis, you might say, people who are in the deep space, take a form and serve humanity. And this is the option that all they're doing is being a servant, really. Continuing on, we do our little service and they do great service, and it just is a never-ending process. So the concept of Jesus is, he's the Son of God or whatever. Well, what happened, if you really look into this, the whole story of Jesus and the 12 disciples and so on, it was adjusted. His birth was moved on to an astronomical time date, which is 3 days or so after the solstice in December, and then the sun starts to rise again, and they say, this is a symbolic story of the timing of the incarnation, of the advent of another kind of energy, and the energy sometimes. The human body has only so much capability to withstand a certain amount of energy. So unless a person is trained for a lifetime, and for example, if there are yogis in India who have also healed people, there's all kinds of stories of healing. Jesus learned a science, and again, the story about where supposedly the Hindus say, he went over to India and Asia and he studied the enlightenments. He studied to do his work, and the ability of healing and ability to use his awareness in very many different planes. And he had his own work of service, which, when he did the service here, he was going to go do something else. There's a whole cosmic cycle, because at different times in humanity's growth, there's different kinds of teachings that need to come in. Because, for example, we might have an avatar in science or music or art, because, for example, in the Middle Ages or after long, there's a really horrible period in world history and Europe, dark times, and then there came the Renaissance, and a lot of great souls came there, and they brought music, and they brought art, and they brought all kinds of things to help humanity. This is just the same process where in avatars such as Jesus, in the esoteric idea of Jesus, brought in a certain kind of energy of love, whereas Buddha brought in wisdom and some other kind of energy, and the two together, those types of energies to love and wisdom, the whole idea is to bring joy. You know, when I was growing up, I was always taught, well, there's this one little sentence in the Bible where it says Jesus wept. I go, okay, well, as I grew older, I go, well, supposedly it's all about joy. Did he ever tell you good jokes? Did he ever laugh? I mean, was he blissful? I mean, and it just seems like the religion has gotten so dark. And the yoga the system in Hindi, the whole system of avatars as proposed in the esoteric teachings, where you have like many, 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 many great, great sages in all different times, in all different ways, come. As we all grow, we become a parent, we learn skills, and we teach other people. This is a natural process that happens. And when the times, the Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, who was an advent of a great avatar, said, well, you know, when the times are dark and there's terrible things going on, people are not respecting life and everything, then, you know, a great avatar comes and they release and they set up a powerful. It's not that they just teach nice words. You see, that's the thing where, you know, even if all the words in the Bible are so pleasant to read and they're inspiring and everything, but there's the real system of the great teachers teaches techniques, practical techniques, that we can have our own personal knowledge and personal experience, so we're not having to believe anymore, so that it becomes knowledge. In the early Christians, there was a gnosis. They were called knowledge. There were people who said, okay, yes, the teacher brings the peace and the joy and all that, but they're also bringing an expansion of consciousness so that we can have practical techniques, so we can have our own experience and learn, because each of us learns in a very unique way. It's very personal, and we don't need to have an intermediary of a pope or confession or anything. We just need a presence within our own being. And that, again, you know, I read the Bible a lot of times long ago, and there's a couple places there I just say, well, it really resonates with me. And one of the places where it says, when you pray, go in your closet or go in your silence and just pray that whatever you pray in secret gets rewarded openly. Because we're going to go inside. We got to go into a place within where the real consciousness expansion happens, where the real fulfillment happens. If we don't breathe in and let our awareness go deep within ourselves and just start to get into a deep rhythm, then we're not going to understand the simplicity of, say, the teachings that Jesus taught. Again, it says in the Bible, the beginning was the Word was God. That's not a new concept. Again, the sacred name of God, the holy name of God, the unspeakable name of God, the great breath of the Almighty. There's just so many terms for it, because the Amen, the Om, all those terms are related to the breathing motion that we're in sync with. That is, they say that God breathed the breath of life into us. When we really understand what that really means, we have to go inside. We have to let all our concepts go aside, because one thing we know for sure, that we don't have the full story of Jesus. Obviously we don't, because it was so long ago and hardly anything was recorded. It wasn't even written down till much later. We don't know what he looks like, so we don't know the whole story. We just don't. We never are going to know the whole story. And when the avatars say, well, they're going to come back, and they're going to come back, why? Because the story gets distorted. They have to come back. But what comes back is the same thing. There's only one source of goodness. There's only one source of infinite joy. Just like, you know, there's millions and millions of flowers, and they all have this beautiful scent, but they all come from the same soil, you see. So all the great avatars and the sages and the teachers of all different kinds, and music and art, are all part of a process to help us understand the magnificence of our own being. Because if there's one thing the great teachers say, and I've listened to a lot of them, and I've read a lot of books about history of religion, is that it's simple. As you go within, the kingdom of heaven is within. It's a literal fact. It's not just an ideology. The single point, the single eye, the third eye, is all in there. It's in the Bible. If you look at it, it's just, there's a few real simple things. Love your neighbor and be kind. You know, there's a few things in there that if you just understand them, you're already right on the right track. You don't have to make this whole big cathedral of information and concepts. It doesn't have, you don't have to have statues of all the angels and the saints, and it's not necessary. And I feel like a lot of times today, I get asked a lot of times, well, do you believe in God, or are you a Christian, and so on. Well, it depends on what you mean, but the thing is that there's a lot more to Jesus. If anybody who listens to this, they're a Christian, and if they feel drawn to that teacher, then, you know, there's a lot more that you can learn besides that book. You know, there's just infinitely more. And then you're not going to learn it reading a book. You're going to learn it by going inside. This is what the teachers say. So all the great teachers have come, and there's, you know, I want to urge people to investigate this a little bit themselves, because, you know, there's a book, for example, this book here, The Light of the Soul. Now this is done by an English woman who went to India, and she met some teachers there who back in the, I think it was the late 1800s, early 1900s, and she did a transmission, kind of intuitive commentary on a very popular book called, in India, one of the foundations of Hindu religion, called the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And the mystical aspect of Christianity is very, very profound. A lot of people who follow Christianity these days do not understand this. They read the book and they get a very simplistic view of it from the local church. But Christianity has a very long history, and it embeds in its teachings some very, very profound concepts of the cosmos that are in symbolic form, and a lot of very interesting stories and parables. And the Bible is a collection of interesting books, which we don't know. There used to be a lot more, and there were, you know, in those days, whoever wrote the books, I mean, you know, it's just like today. Well, you know, they write a book, and, you know, you don't know where they got the information from, but, you know, that's all we got, so we have to go by it. But the thing is that, what did actually Jesus teach, and what's the point? Now, I mean, are we going to go up in heaven somewhere? I mean, what was this? Are we going to be taken up in a spaceship, or is there heaven on the other side of the moon, or is it on Jupiter? Or... So a lot of the concepts that people have in Christianity, there are a lot of distractions from a deeper experience. And to understand the symbolic nature, I was talking about this book, The Light of the Soul. Patanjali, in the Hindu tradition, was very, very specific about techniques of how to deal with the mind. And this particular commentary, The Light of the Soul by Alice Bailey, was written with a metaphysical, esoteric Christian overlay, in a way, comparative to the Buddhist and the Hindu, because, again, the great teachers, if they're trying to transmit esoteric knowledge about the cosmos, about the angels and the, you know, all those stuff, you know, the historical stuff. There's a lot of symbolism, and in the ancient days, all the scribes, symbolism and metaphor, you know, if you had to carve it in stone, you want to be as short as possible. So they used symbols and metaphors they combined the teaching of the journey of the human soul through the zodiac, through the different cosmos, the journey of the outward journey, the inward journey, how we're supposed to grow and develop. And see, we need to know that. We need, you know, realization. We got a short time on this earth. And if we're going to realize, well, even if we believe in Jesus and we want to follow him, then, you know, there's a whole lot more information that you can experience and have relative to that particular teacher in view, but you have to be open and learn and find out where the roots of Christianity are and how it relates to some of the other teachings that have been around for a long, long, long time, long before Christian. For example, Buddha was the golden rule. He was 600 years before Christian. He was a compassionate one. You know, definitely he didn't even want to eat animals. So you talk about compassion in the Bible, they're all talking about cutting up the sheep and goats and sacrificing all the stuff, but you won't see that in the Buddhist. They don't want to do that to animals. So as far as compassion, Now, you don't see any Buddhist wars. They're the victims, but they're not the warriors. You don't see Buddhists start wars. So I urge people to do a little more research into the roots of Christianity, because I'm going to make some more videos. I'm going to try to make some more quotes and share some more books with you, because the understanding that the great teachers have, including Jesus, is more than just, okay, love your neighbor and be kind and go to church on Sunday and all that. There's a whole deeper, profound inner experience of the peace and the joy, and beyond that, the understanding of our own existence and our role and our ability. Because even Jesus said, well, don't you know that you're God's? I'm teaching you things that you can do yourself, and people don't realize that. We're not supposed to be these sheep, really. We're supposed to be, again, the sheep and the goats. The goats are the ones that climb up on the top of the mountains, and they feel very secure because they're just confidence, knowledge. The sheep, they don't know where they're going, they just follow along, you see. So we're supposed to be more like the goats, to go on the mountaintops of understanding, go deep within ourselves and really understand more than just like all about sin and all that stuff. To understand, how do you become kind? What is the roots of compassion within our own selves, so that if we're feeling that inside ourselves, it just flows out. You don't have to wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to be kind today and do a bunch of good deeds. They just sort of flow out because you're just living, And I'm going to have to make a little more video, because I'm trying to keep these within, say, 25, 30 minutes at the most, including the edits. It's a pretty profound subject, and it's very important to me, because I don't want to live with conflict. I grew up in a very Christian home. A lot of relatives are Christian. And as I got older, I don't know what to describe myself. I don't have a religion. I want to believe. I don't want to believe things. I want to know things, and the things that I know, that I've learned over the years, is just profoundly amazing, and it just keeps getting more amazing. And I feel very confident that with the practice I do of meditation, in the deep meditation, my prayers get conveyed in my breathing, and in my daily activities and my giving out and everything, then I receive whatever. There's a natural process in here, in living without trying to put a moral concept on how to live, but to just generally be kind, be kind, and try to give out, and then you get into that motion, and things happen, and there's a nice flow that happens. And a lot of the teachings of the great teachers, they're incredibly simple, really, really simple. It takes a certain kind of basic understanding and look at it a different way, go from the outside to the inside, and allow yourself to synchronize with something very vast. Prayer can be done in words, but you don't need words to have a prayer. And what is a prayer? It's not going up to the moon and back. It's not going out to the sun and back. The prayer doesn't go anywhere. The prayer is to the beingness that is in us. It's not over there somewhere. That's why the response can be quick. See, deep down we answer our own prayers. So on some deep level, we make good choices. We choose good people to be around. And we become our own angel by the choices that we make. We attract everything, and by clearing ourselves in meditation and not having the concepts, and put aside all religious concepts for a bit and say, look, whatever's out there in the infinite, in some conditions, God it's like impolite to talk about God, because what are you going to say about something vastly infinite? What are you going to say? Just feel this life. You can kind of have a basic understanding. Like there's an old saying that if you want to understand one little gold thing, you can understand a big gold thing. If you understand as above, so below, we understand our own being. Then we understand all the other beingness. And it's a very, very simple and basic concept to grasp, that the root of our own consciousness, the source of the answer to all our prayers and all that, is actually right within us, and it never has been anywhere else. And that's what all the great teachers have said. And I have my own teacher I've learned a lot from, and I listen. It's the same old message, an eternal message of like go within and relax and then receive. And then when you receive and you feel good, then you give out and you serve and you do joyful things. And so I really appreciate people listen, and there's not a lot of people out there. Just a little conversation. I put my 2 cents out there. I don't claim to be authority on anything. I just urge people to think about a little bit about some of the things I've said and the concepts I introduced, and maybe perhaps read some of the books, and like and share if you feel like doing so. And I appreciate all the feedback, and there's certain questions I might, people want to put in a comment on anything that my videos, that ask me a question. Maybe I'll tell you what I think about it and what I've learned about that subject. So thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you in another video.